welcome to the Friday morning live. I have pre-recorded this because at the time that you're watching this, I will already be at my ultrasound, my 20-week ultrasound that I'm super looking forward to, and my first in-person appointment that I've had this entire pregnancy. This is my 11th pregnancy, in case you haven't met me before. My name's Tara. I'm a Christian wife, homeschool mom of 10 kids with, yes, baby number 11 on the way. And I'm super excited that ultrasound, my first in-person appointment. This is with my OBGYN I've been with, oh my goodness, since we moved back to Ottawa. So yeah, it's going to be a really special appointment. I'm looking forward to it. She's like kind of like extended family now because she's brought into the world via C-section. All my kids are C-section, and she will have the pleasure of doing this one as well just shortly after Christmas. So pre-recording to share with you part 2 of a series I started on Wednesday. My apologies again for some of the sound glitches. I'm working with tech support to get that worked out. So I'll be checking this one in advance, making sure it's nice and smooth for you. There's not going to be any little skipped words or anything. I was talking on Wednesday about kids not listening. And by listening, I kind of, tongue-in-cheek say, well, that's kind of a euphemism. That's a softer way of saying a more biblical language, which would be the children aren't obeying. It's not that they can't hear you unless they, understand they have auditory issues, but by and large, most children, all of my children, have perfectly good hearing. So I've never used that language in my home. Be like, you're not listening to me. Because I have a couple tricks and tips that I've developed over the years that have really helped me engage with my kids more, I think, like more effectively when it comes to obedience, right? Obviously, they're human beings. They have a will. They, choose their choices, and those choices have outcomes, which is what I'm going to talk about today, and how I handle it so that I'm less prone to resort to yelling to kind of get through their thick skull. But it's not only their skull, right, or their like hearing. I'm just connecting with their will. Their choice to obey what mommy has clearly said and is perfectly reasonable or not. So I talked about kind of defining on Wednesday what is obedience. And in our family, that looks like it's got to be right away, completely, and with a good attitude. If it's missing any of those components, it's not really obedience. So with that definition in mind, which we communicate to our kids and teach them over the years, when they kind of begin to hit more like the middle kid ages, 8 and up, I expect at that point that they understand these 3 parts. We've been over this since they were little kids, and I've given more instructions at the younger ages about like what mommy and daddy expect in terms of obedience. So like, yeah, you picked up your toys, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, but man, did you ever stink up a grumbly storm the whole time, huffing and puffing and stomping your feet. So that I use more as a point of correction and instruction and teaching them like what is obedience? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What do we expect it? So I guide in those years. Anyway, by the time they're about 7, 8, kind of use your own discernment. Then I level it up to now I'm going to help you understand what happens when you don't choose to obey right away with a good attitude and get the whole job done. Instead of like leaving, half of it for someone else to do. Then I let them know that these are choices. That's just life. So this is really good life training. And I do it outside of the heat of the moment in advance. And it's a repeated conversation because they're kids, they're learning. And this is just part of training and guiding them and instructing them as I see it. It's part of my job, my God-given job as mom, stay-at-home mom. And, a husband, obviously we're on the same page about this, to instruct our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord and the respect of God, respecting their parents. Because in Ephesians 6:1, one of many verses, including the 5th commandment, children are instructed, commanded really to honor their parents, to obey their parents in the Lord, for this is good. It's not an abuse of power, though it can be abused. Any authority can be abused, but not all authority is in and of itself bad. So understand that I have God-given authority and limited authority. Obviously, I can't just do anything I want to my kids. I'm still constrained by the law of God myself, right, unto my children. But this is a right and appropriate way of guiding them and training them for their future adult lives to understand in this world, we have choices. We have a free will given to us by God, and we can use it to choose choices that, we like, that have good outcomes, that are glorifying to God and a blessing to mankind, and alternatively of, choices that we may not like the outcomes at all. They might be very painful. They might be very uncomfortable. They might end up making a mess, and now it's going to take twice as long to clean up or whatever. So lots of opportunities, if you choose to look at it that way, I do, to train your children in understanding outcomes of their choices, that their choices are their choices. It's one of my sayings with the kids is you choose your choices. And I say to myself, right, it's good advice. I choose my choices. I choose my feelings about something. I choose my reactions. I choose my responses. And as they get older, you can build on this foundation, especially once they're in the young adult years. Really talk to them more when there's been like a real blowout, real conflict. Like we can go back and do a replay when the tempers have cooled and say, okay, what happened here? We can kind of back it up and talk to them. Okay, well, first this happened and then you chose this. Oh, and then you see, then you chose this. I mean, you could have chose that, but you chose this. Okay, go on with the story. And then what happened? Right? And they see that it was just a sequence and a series of choices that finally led them to where they are now. And now it's time to live with the outcome of those choices, typically meaning I choose what the consequence is going to be. But here's my tips. It's not done in the heat of the moment. If I choose in the heat of the moment out of my pure raw emotion of how I feel about the situation or feel towards my child in the midst of a situation, like they just upped and hit somebody or did something very rude and offensive, that's not how they do it. So I kind of use a cop analogy. You know what a cop, if you've ever been pulled over or you've seen it on TV, right? A good cop is going to keep their calm. They're simply there to enforce the law. They're not there to make it up on the fly or just to berate you as a human being and shame you into obeying the law of the land. That's, thinking of speeding and speed limits. It was clearly posted. It's not like you didn't know. This was clear in advance. You've gone through your training. So it's not as if you can say, oh, I forgot. I didn't know. It was too hard, right? An officer is just going to pull you over and calmly say, God, I clocked you doing 100 there in the 60. And it's like, yes or no, right? Like you can deny it, but he's got the proof. So I just stay calm like a cop and I say, hey, did you hit your brother there? And they're like, yeah. Okay, thank you for being honest. All right, so what's the consequence for hitting your brother? I might say, why'd you hit your brother? Explore a little bit what was going on. Because, there might be a little bit of a backstory there too. It might turn out that there's two people that need some correction and some consequences for their choices, right? It usually takes two to tango in a situation like that. So then we just talk about what's going to be the outcome of their choices. And this helps them, helps me stay calm because I'm more like a cop. I'm not making up the law. I'm just administering the law. I'm just enforcing the law. So my children are growing up understanding there are limits, right? There are rules in the world. There are rules in our home. They're reasonable. They're well established. They're all tied directly to the 10 Commandments. If you want to take time to sort of break them down. And because we discussed beforehand what's going to happen, they already know, okay, here's what's coming. And it helps them stay more calm, helps us all stay more calm. And listen, if they need a couple minutes to cool their temper, if I need a couple minutes to cool my temper, that's actually really wise. So we might just say, you go sit over there, you go sit over there, I'm going to go over here. And in a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about what just happened. All right, that's just smart. Because like I said, if the cop just started unloading emotionally on somebody on the side of the road, that's a whole other issue. That's inappropriate. That's overstepping the bounds, as I understand it, of their authority that's given by the state, right? And ultimately flows from, and that's the way I see it. So the 3 C's are one of my big adages. When it comes to discipline and enforcing consequences, they say calm, clear, and consistent. So my kids know what's going to happen. Hey, I'm live. Do you want people to see you? Okay, well, you can stand there. I'm going to keep talking though, okay? So yeah, with those three C's in mind, I'm able then to just enforce the law and tell them, here's what's going to happen, right? Like you're either going to get a lecture, like you're going to get a warning, or you're going to get a consequence, a full consequence, depending. Like I just discern the situation, what I think would happen before. We've gone over this before. This isn't the first time we've run into this situation. It's going to be like a ticket. It's going to be the consequence, whatever that looks like in our house. And the older they get, it's going to be more tied to a loss of privilege because we're also striving to impress upon our children that greater responsibility leads to greater rewards, right? Greater freedoms. That's a good life lesson. So that's one of the things we do. I'm finding this really distracting. Would you stop, please? Thanks. All right. He just loves being a little showman. He's such a drama king. All right, I'm just going to ask these kids where they're going. Hey, guys, are you guys doing costume time right now? Well, please go back upstairs until I'm done talking to my friends. Sure, if you're quiet about it. Okay. So yes, teaching children that choices have outcomes, they're clear, they're consistent, you've talked about it in advance. And if this is a unique situation, like, oh my goodness, I don't even know how I'm going to handle this. I'm so upset what just happened. It's kind of complicated. Buy yourself some time, okay? just let yourself calm down, let the kids calm down. I do some investigation to make sure that the kids understand that mom is fair, that I'm not just going to immediately just lay down the law out of my reactionary anger at the last person who ended up sort of yelling or being caught in the scene of a crime, so to speak. So this teaches them so many things on so many levels, how responsibility reaps, greater rewards and privileges and freedoms, which is just true in the adult world, right? The less responsible you are, the less you adhere to the good, appropriate laws of society. There's consequences for that, whether it's in the context of a family, of a home, of a community, of like society. So this is good life prep for them. It's also training them to stay more calm because they're seeing me model more calmness and consistency. And I'm not like monster mom who's really unpredictable. They kind of don't know what to emotionally expect from me, depending if I'm just flying off the handle because I'm having a bad day or had a bad sleep or something. So keeping that cop analogy in mind as you enforce the law, simply time to give more instruction because they're really, it's more of an immaturity issue than a flat out disobedience issue. So that takes discernment, that takes practice. I've had 16 plus years to practice this now, so I hope this has helped you kind of frame your mind and frame your heart a little bit more if you're struggling with yelling at your kids and you feel like they're not really listening. So give them a warning in advance. They know what it is. For example, I talked on Wednesday about the screen time thing. Like, let's say an 11-year-old is he's been given a timer and it's time for the screen to go off, and then he just says, I'm not done yet, or just a few more minutes, or I'm just finishing my game. Well, it's at your discretion if you're going to allow that as an extension. But personally, in my home, just to kind of, because we're really, really strict about screen time and also just about like respecting your parents appropriately. It's one thing to ask me, hey mom, I know my time's up. Please can I have 5 more minutes? And we've negotiated that. That's really respectful. I'm actually going to honor that kind of responsibility. A sullen voice, then eye contact, leaving hand pause, be like, I'm not done yet. I don't even give a warning because we've already talked about this in advance. I hit the power button and I might give a full out consequence, say, listen, we agreed that when time is up, time is up. You knew that the time was coming. I gave you a 5-minute warning and you disobeyed because what did you fail to do? You didn't do it right away. And that wasn't really a very good attitude, buddy. So as a consequence, because we pre-agreed on this, you've lost your next screen time. And they're like, whoa, right. Because mom calmly, clearly, and consistently enforced the law. I don't mess around. This isn't a hearing issue. This is an obedience issue. And they have their part to play, and I have my part to play. And when we both do that more consistently, and it takes some practice, it's okay. If you screw up, apologize. Then it gets easier. Life is calmer. Home is more pleasant, right? And the kids are much less likely to push it because they know there's no messing around with the law in this house. Not that I'm like super strict, crazy all the time, but that I have a high respect for God, a high respect for myself, love my kids, and I'm going to do my job, and I expect them to do their job as we grow in grace together in this family. And we're aiming to, abide by my understanding of the law of God, which is so good and brings us so much joy when we see it as a good thing rather than a restrictive thing. So that's a whole other talk for another day. I hope this has blessed you, helped you. Feel free to comment below and let me know just, if you're experiencing the not listening stuff and if this has helped you, kind of giving you some tips. You're like, oh, I'm going to do that. Otherwise, just want to remind you that if you're enjoying the content that I've been doing in this Joyful, Confident Moms of Many group, private Facebook group, and there's some other moms in your life, you're like, they would really appreciate this. Like no pressure or anything. But if you think that they would just at least appreciate an invite, it's up to them if they choose to join or not. They can read the description and just see if this is a good fit for them. I would super appreciate it if you shared that with others, because when I was a young mom, just like totally trying to figure it out, no idea what I was doing at all, I didn't really have a lot of support. And I think this can be a great way to just encourage each other as moms, even through technology and screens. Like, we're real people on the other end of these screens, right? This is my house. There's my stairs. You just met some of my kids. So feel free to hit the invite button to as many as moms as you feel comfortable inviting. I would super appreciate it, helping the group grow and helping other moms embrace the blessing of children with more joy and more confidence. So God bless you. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Oh, before I go, thank you, all of you who filled out the poll that I ran in the group to find out how I can best serve you next week. I decided to run a challenge this month. I'm aiming to do one every month. Challenge is kind of like a mini course broken out just over a few days, a few lives. So I'm gonna do a 5-day challenge, which is gonna be a little bit more of a deep dive into the winning topic was how to do big family chores. So I've broken up into 5 segments of things that are gonna help you. Things like how do I approach it in the early years? Like as soon as they're old enough to like walk, and then how do you start to kind of level them up into assigned chores? How do I follow through like in actually training them realistically with so many kids in the house? It's different topics. And then how do we actually do it? How do we coordinate? When do we do it? Like get into specifics. Do we do an allowance? Kind of what does it look like in our house? And it's like, it's not that this cookie cutter thing, but it's what works really well in our house. And I've seen other families who kind of struggle with this. So if that's you and you're like, you'd love to learn from a mom of many with 10 plus kids, figure out how do they make it work? Because it does. It works really well. It's much more calm and it's cool. And I'm working myself out of a job here, which is great. Honestly, when the kids get old enough to move out, I'm just going to have to get a cleaner because I'm literally just managing most of the stuff right now. I haven't done laundry for the kids in years. I haven't had to like really mop the floor in years because the training pays off. So I'm excited to share that with you next week. So you can look forward to that. And again, I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.